What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebrous Infinite, and today we'll be showing you folks how to create the ultimate bound farms here in Nightingale. I have two designs for today, one being a more straightforward approach, and then one that I'm very proud of. My first infinitely looping farm. Based on a theory that I've had for a long time, my discovery of infinitely looping realms will be so beneficial to us all moving forwards. I'll show you folks everything you're looking for to get these farms set up for yourself, the benefits and differences of minor cards, and even how to get rare drops with these farms. If you enjoyed the video or like the guides I've been making for Nightingale, let me know with a comment down below or a thumbs up on the video. But now, let's jump into how to make the ultimate bound farms here in Nightingale. Now, the first question you might have when making a bound farm is one that I had myself. Which is better, Blood Moon Apogean or Maleficiate Apogean, for farming bound in specific? And the answer to that is pretty interesting, as they are two very different cards, with a clear winner between the two. While Blood Moon is in play, you'll not see so much increased drops, but instead, different drops altogether. With Blood Moon, all ingots dropped by bound become hollow and advanced hollow ingots, which is interesting, but not that beneficial to us. As well, all enemy types do have increased chances on rare drops, though the increase is not as beneficial as Maleficiate's is. These enemies range from Eoten trees, to prey and predators, to automatons, and pretty much everything in between, excluding creatures like Apex or Fabled, as they drop their rare drops 100% of the time. We know rare drops are increased because you'll see more Fabled drops as well as bound components. And then Maleficiate, one of the best worst cards in the game. This doubles drops, increases rare drops, and also makes your character into a permanent noise machine in the process. Before we talk about what Maleficiate does, let's fix that noise machine thing first. We'll just turn the player emote volume down to 0, and then you won't have any of that constant grunting. So for what Maleficiate does is it increases your chances at rare items, such as advanced versions of materials as well as bound components, increasing your chances of finding Fabled drops from common creatures, increasing your odds of finding the incredibly rare boosted stats on bound drops, as well as mass-producing lumber and ingots for you to use when building. It's a pretty great card, and now that we can turn off the emote volume, it's even better. You just have to keep an eye on your health in the process. Now we'll set up our portals and our realms. We'll make 3 portals for our Ascended Gloom realms, then 1 portal for our Vault farm. In order to get the best layout, you'll need to reset these realms until things generate just right. So you'll want to make multiples of each card. I worked with 3 cards at a time for each biome, crafting more as I needed to along the way. It takes a lot of patience to get things to spawn right, so don't rush these processes, just crack away at them over a few days, and by the end of it, you'll be very happy that you did. We'll then play each card and start looking for the right realm layouts. So for the forest, we'll go through each step, then for the next 2 realms, we'll just point out some extra info along the way. First, we'll make our way over to the Fae Tower. We'll then clear the tower so that we can unlock all of the Bastille locations across the map. Then we'll check the map to see if the realm is right. What we're looking for is a Bastille of intellect that is close to the portal, as well as a high amount of intellect Bastilles overall, so 5 or more. This way, per realm, we increase the odds of finding the bound we're looking for. Knights and Elite Knights drop Lacunas, Chirosiphon drop Lacunas and Chirosiphon, Assassins will drop Hollow Metal, Darkweavers will drop Crystal Ichor, Bombardiers and Snipers will drop Gunpowder and Bombardier materials, Common bound will drop regular ichor as well as fiber, leather, and wicks. And then lastly, bruisers and aegis will drop you lumber. Then we'll play Maleficiate when we have a good realm. Find ourselves a Bastille of Intellect and purposefully get it wrong. This will spawn bound in a small group, and will vary from each Bastille with what bound they spawn. As well, when the realm spins down or the portal itself closes, the Bastilles will spawn in a new set of bound for you to farm. But we also reap the rewards of increased rare drops from all of the creatures in the realm. This is why we're opening up an Ascended Gloom realm for each biome, as we'll then be able to farm multiple rare resources while we're here. Things like fabled drops from Carnutes, automaton knights and bishops, and a ton more. It turns these into really fun realms for you to revisit, adding in the challenge of constant damage and the reward of getting rare drops. Then when you find the bound that you're looking for, you can keep failing the Bastille to farm your targeted bound efficiently and quickly. It's actually probably one of the easiest high profit farms in the game, as you can gather hundreds of lumber and ingots in a very short amount of time. Now for our Swamp Gloom, we'll come here and do our thing, clear the tower, and reset until we find a decent realm. Then play Maleficiate, and in this realm outside of bound farming, we can also hunt down harpies for their fabled drops, though there isn't much else here to farm outside of those two, as there is no rare drop for Grendels as far as I know. And for our desert, we'll do the same as before, finding the right realm layout. And here we can also farm automatons as well as Seer Eoten for their rare drops alongside bound farming. Now, you may notice that we aren't building anything in these realms, and it's because currently at least, we don't need to. We just go in, blast them, and then get our drops. But maybe someday in the future, our farming efforts can become more sophisticated in these realms. Though, if you're looking for something a little bit more complicated to do, stay tuned for the infinite looping bound farm. That one's got a good chunk of technicality to it. And for our final farming realm, I'll show you two ways to set this up here. First, the simple version, then the looping version. We'll be looking for a similar thing here to our Gloom realms, a Bastille of Intellect right at the start of the vault. This way we could get to seeing if the Bastille will spawn the bound we're looking for more quickly. If so, that's great, and we'll farm them as much as we need. And if not, we'll then head out, wait for the realm to wind down, then head back in to check what the new spawns are. While we have the spawns that we want to see, we could play Maleficate Apigean to hopefully increase the odds of getting what we're looking for. You'll get crazy amounts of resources this way, so be sure to use your recruit's inventory for anything you can't carry, like common Lagunas, because you'll be swimming in the stuff very shortly after setting up these farming realms. Resetting Vault realms is actually a bit more forgiving than Gloom realms, where layouts can vary much more widely. But in Vaults, you have, like, about a dozen or so ways that they'll generate. So getting a Bastille of Intellect early on should at least theoretically be an easy thing. Luck does still sadly come into play here, so if you get unlucky with this a bunch, just make sure it isn't becoming something frustrating, as that's not something that I want y'all to do here just for like high-end loot. So now for what's probably the craziest thing I've come across in my bound farming so far, what I call an infinite loop bound farm. So before we show the farm, I'll explain the premise so it can hopefully make sense here and I don't just sound like some raving lunatic. So what we'll have are 6 realms, each looping back into one realm that will act as the hub for all of our vault farms. You can imagine it as a circle kinda, where each red dot represents a desert vault, and then the green is our forest vault. So in between each desert vault, we'll return to the forest vault and head to the next as we need to in a loop. For this, we'll need our vault with the intellect bastille early on, and from here, we'll place down a portal. Once we have that down, we'll set up a forest vault, and we'll yet again reset this realm until we get an intellect bastille. Just at least somewhere along the way in the vault. This one doesn't need to be early on. This could be a bit of a pain to reset, as you'll have to head through your initial desert portal to then reset the forest vault. And then after that, you'll have to head through both the desert and the forest vault into a new desert vault that you will also likely need to reset a few times. But once you have your forest vault with a bastille of intellect, you can then move on to the next step, which is establishing a portal network in this vault. Each vault starts with this little safe hub area, or at least mostly safe hub area, and this is where we'll set up our portal network, placing down each portal and then resetting it until we have a good setup. As we head through each realm and check each bastille, we'll gradually move closer to having our first realm closed down. And by the time we get back around to each realm, they will have just freshly reset as long as we set our realms up right. We want a bastille of intellect early on for all but one of these realms, where we'll aim for a bastille later on in the vault to ensure a long enough wait time. If you want to be extra safe, you can have 2 or as many more late bastilles as you'd like to slow down the process naturally while limiting idle time, which keeps this all more interesting. We'll make our first portal without resetting the realm here. This is our starter desert vault that we'll use to jump into this loop, kinda like our point of origin. Then we'll make our next portal, play a desert vault combo, and reset the realm. Our first realm will remain intact, and our second fresh vault will be accessible. This is kinda crazy though, because I went for, like, I kid you not, hundreds of hours thinking each realm instance was tied. So if I reset a realm, it would reset all previous versions. But it turns out that that's not the case, and as long as the cards remain in the portal, you will always have access to that old realm. Even if you reset that realm in the future, as long as those cards are there in that portal, you can always return, which is huge, and we will use this aspect of the game for virtually as many things as possible from here on out. Once we've reset enough to get an intellect bastille early on, we'll then make our next portal, naming them each letter along the way to keep our portals organized. I made 5 vaults here, so from A to E, but I'm not kidding when I say that this is limitless, and you can make technically as many of these desert loops back to your forest vault as you'd want to. There might be a hard limit on your save file size or how many realms that you can generate on a character, but if so, it's quite a high number. But you don't need to make an insane amount of these. As I said, by the time we're getting back from Vault A to E, it will have reset by then. And heck, I might even be overdoing things with 5 vaults, but it felt better safe than sorry to ensure each vault was consistently being a fresh one. And once we have all of our vaults in place, the farm is technically up and running. We'll just make some basic provisions here to ensure that we could do this for as long as we'd like to. We'll start with a foundation of our choosing, just whatever you think looks nice. Then we'll place 4 planters on it, all in the same spot in a star shape. This will serve as our micro farm, keeping us fed on long farming trips. Then we'll place a bedroll, a basket to store our crops and seeds, a mortar to make those seeds, and lastly a candle to give everything the well-lit buff, just as an extra nudge in crafting times and growth times. We've chosen a forest vault because there's this tiny puddle of water that we can use to fill our watering can and water our crops. But if you want to use a different vault for its layout, the next choice would be a swamp vault, as they always have rooms with water in them. And with this simple little setup here, you have infinite rest, food, and the ability to make said food all in your hub vault. So, I mean, again, this is all just on a technical level, but you never have to leave at this point. You can spend the rest of your life in the realms farming just rare drops from Bound. But that's probably not advisable. Either way, you could do this for as long as you'd like to. So now let's show this in action just really quickly here, just to prove that it works to you all before you go off and start making this for yourselves, potentially. We'll pop into our starter vault, Vault A, and check the bound that spawn here. If they aren't to our liking, we'll then head to the forest vault. If you need to, clear out any natural spawns of bound. They'll always respawn in different locations in the room, but those are set, so you'll get used to their spawn points eventually. Then we'll run through each realm, checking each intellect bastille, till we come back around to our first vault, or Vault A, in which at that point we'll start to loop back over again. Now, as a key bit of advice here, you don't want to run through these as quickly as humanly possible. Walk a little bit. Take a leisurely pace through these vaults, and that way you're better ensuring that you'll reset each bastille along the way. I've personally found that I like to put on just a good album in the background for the 2 runs that I've made so far, both with fantastic results here. And as a final bit of a heads up, your portals will most likely become possessed in the vaults here. They'll make portal opening noises and turn invisible. That's normal. Try to not be too concerned about that. If you stand near the portal, you can check if it's open. But yeah, this is all due to how loading and culling works in the vaults, I believe. It's just much more aggressive than out in the normal realms. So there we go, folks, and I'm not gonna lie, in my almost 30 years of gaming now, have never made such a cool farm in a video game. This applies so many factors of Nightingale, and is just crazy productive. If you want the simple setup, it'll have all of your needs covered. And if you want those uber rare items in the game, my infinite loop approach will get you what you need in a much more reasonable amount of time. So, we're almost reaching the pinnacle of farming in Nightingale here. I've covered wood, stone, ores, and gems, and now we've covered rare and bound drops. We still have one more ultimate farm in store here, so please subscribe for more if you'd like to stick around. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one. Until then, peace.